This is a demonstration on how to draw an eye. I have a variety of drawing pencils here, but for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to forego some of the lighter ones and I'm going to draw with my 3B pencil. When we discussed earlier about the structure of the skull, it's important to think about the structure of an eye, and that is quite a large round ball. And so I'm going to draw a ball, and notice how I'm not erasing and I'm drawing many, many lines to kind of get the shape that I want. And so here is a round ball. And so what I'm going to do is then think about how the eyelid covers this round ball. And so this is going to be some areas, some lines I might draw darker because this is, the eyeball itself is covered from the skin. And so the darker lines are going to be ones in which I'm going to draw the top and bottom of the opening of the eye. And when you learned about it before, you always think about the football shape, but in reality, that's really not what most eyes look like. The top eyelid is always slightly higher and is not symmetrical. It tips a little bit sooner and then comes down. And so what I have here is a football shape, but it looks like it's a little bit higher here. And if we think about the structure of an eye, we want to think about the fact that it is three-dimensional and round, and that the top eyelid technically closes over the bottom eyelid. And so when we draw the bottom eyelid, I want you to think about making it flatter and not as high as the top of it, and it kind of tucks underneath that top eyelid, that bottom eyelid does. And then there's an area over there called the canthus, and that's like your little tear duct area that you can kind of just close off. And so that is your tear duct. So this is the opening of your eye and the first layer of skin touching your actual eyeball. Next is I want you to think about your eyelid that comes over the top. Now, the eyelid on the top is always or usually more skin because, like I said, similar to the jaw, the bottom eyelid stays connected to the face, but it's like the top eyelid is what closes, so that has more of the skin. And so I'm going to draw like a little rainbow shape that kind of follows along the shape of the eye, and that is going to be the extra skin. But we know that the eye is nestled into the skull. And so there's a little line right here that we kind of draw over a little bit that's going to be shaded in. That's that skull part. That's going to be the bone. And so now we want to think about the pupil and the iris. People sometimes draw it in a shape that's not perfectly round. It's important to realize that a iris is, sometimes it touches here, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes with people with thin, kind of squinty eyes, it covers so much of the iris, but I'm going to do someone who's a little bit wide-eyed, and I want you to think about if this was like a dotted line, that this would be a complete round circle, okay? But I'm just going to draw it and try not to make this pointy, and that's what people do sometimes too. And so then in the center of the color part, which is the iris, is your pupil. Now your pupil is just a hole like a camera lens, and it is wide to let in a lot of light and tiny when it's to let in a little bit light. To be in normal daylight, you want to make a darkened circle that's in the center of this circle and not the center of what you can see. So sometimes people put it in the wrong spot, okay? And so you want to make sure that that is located there. And then before we get on too far, I want you to finish the bottom lid, and you realize that this is the piece of skin that's touching the eyeball. There's also like another piece of skin that is the edge of that you can kind of, you know, some girls put makeup on that. It's that area. And, you know, I kind of clogged it up with a little bit of shading. Later on, you can take a pencil and keep that. That always catches light. And so that would always be a little bit light. And then it's from there, we could add a little bit, maybe a smaller eyelid, because, you know, that's not enough skin to open and close. And so when we begin to make the eye look real, the first thing that you want to do is show that you're alive, and that's wetness and the idea that your eyes glisten. And you know, it wasn't until the Renaissance time that they started to really put that really light shape of white on your eye that indicates that maybe lights are hitting your eye. And so, you know, you can put one, you can put two, it all depends on how many lights are in the room. And then when you start to color in darkly that dark hole of your pupil, you want to make sure that the white of the eye stays unshaded. And so you kind of keep that. It might interrupt your pupil perhaps. It depends. And so you want to make sure that no shading goes into that white of the eye. And then some people, as you start to add color and shading on the color part, some people with light colored eyes often have a dark rim around the edge of their eyes, kind of like mine. And so when you shade or think about shading a little bit using your pencil in light strokes, make sure your strokes go in towards that pupil, right? And so that every bit of shading is going in the direction of what it's forming. And so if you're from a particular country that is south of the equator or near the equator, you're going to have very, very dark eyes. And so your eyes might be almost as dark as your pupil. But we'll just go with like an average light tone here, but knowing that you could add as much value as you wanted depending on who you're actually drawing and what you're trying to accomplish here. I am making my outside edges a little bit darker in order to show a little bit of that emphasis, and then make sure that pupil stays nice and round. And then next we want to think about your eyelid is a three-dimensional form, and so it will cast a shadow onto your white of your eye. So technically the white of your eye isn't white all around. It's a little bit darker on the edges, where that eyelid kind of intersects. It's a little bit darker around your canthus, that little area, that's your tear duct in there. And then you want to make sure that you do not shade in that little area that is around your eye, and that's where your eyelashes are going to go. And when you start to shade a little bit in your eyelid, you want to realize that we kind of want to eliminate some of these outlines and start to create a feeling that this is like a bone coming down here, and it kind of joins, and you can add a little bit of tone around. And so what we have here is a basic eye, and sometimes if you want to add eyelashes to it, it does look a little feminine if you go too crazy with the eyelashes and you're drawing like a male or someone that isn't, or a young person that isn't wearing like mascara. So what I want you to think about is that when you do draw eyelashes, that the eyelashes curl away from the eye and that they're not like a squished spider there on top of your eye. So I like to start at the eye edge and I press harder and then I go lighter. And so it kind of almost just makes one pass of the line. You don't want them all the same, you know what I mean? You kind of want to vary them, and you can go back and make them thicker at the area where it joins the lid if you like, but it's always nice to have them thinner as you go, so you kind of don't go back and forth when you make eyelashes. And so if you notice, the ones on the right curl right, the ones as I go, I'm starting to go more like straight up and down a little bit, slightly curling away so that they're not all going in the same direction. And then the bottom eyelashes, I usually do a little bit less, and it's on that second line that you want to do, okay, to kind of get those bottom eyelashes, but I usually don't go too much into that. And so whenever you draw anything, the most important thing is that you understand the structure of it and what's actually happening in your shapes, so that you can really get a sense of what realism you're trying to achieve, because you understand how it's made. Okay, thank you.